It's Market Day Report. Let's jump into the markets here, and we'll start with, how about the bean market? Beans, good place to start. $9.99 and a quarter. Notice we've taken it as low as $9.93 and 3/4, but we're 2.5 lower on the session. But again, going back to the point that we're below that $10 level on soybeans. What about soy meal? Those contracts have been lower all day long. We have seen a little bit of strength in bean oil and the contracts above 50 cents, except for the October contract. But again, December, the most active at 50.14. It's up 65. Corn market has been under pressure as well. At 412.5, it's down 3, tight trade range here. And then the wheat market, Chicago, we'll hit new crop contracts here. July at 547 and 3/4, that's down 4. July hard red is 543 and a quarter. It's off 5 1/4. Spring wheat contracts have been lower all day, and the cotton market has been lower as well, down 47, 65.30 after dipping down into the 64-cent trade area on the new crop. Chris Robinson's with Robinson Ag Marketing. Scott Shelady's the cow guy. All right, Scott, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we had overnight a report from Bloomberg saying that, and I think this was obvious, but I know that there's some people that are holding out hope, and I don't want to sound crass, but, Donald Trump's tariffs were deemed illegal by the lower courts. It's going to the Supreme Court November the 5th. Anybody in their right mind, when I'm talking countries now, any country in their right mind that's dealing with Trump and tariffs when it comes to grains isn't going to do anything until they get some sort of clarity from those courts. He should prevail, and it shouldn't matter. But I think we're going to be in no man's land. Well, Bloomberg's report was that they don't believe, or at least it was the Congress or some congressmen had admitted that they don't think that the Chinese are going to buy any soybeans this year, basically, was the gist of the report, which doesn't surprise me. So that was a little bit of a negative pressure on top of what we saw yesterday for corn and wheat with that report. So I wanted to ask Chris. Chris, I don't know if you saw that report. I don't know if it surprises you, but what are your thoughts when it comes to the tariffs, them being deemed illegal, seeing them in front of the Supreme Court, and what other countries might do with us before we get some sort of clarity on it?
Legal, illegal, at the end of the day, the Chinese don't want to buy our soybeans. They're not going to buy our soybeans. That's the problem. And people talk about China and corn. Historically, and this gets kind of lost in the weeds, China has really never bought a lot of our corn. 30 years ago, they decided they were going to be self-sufficient in corn for them, which they mostly are, and they were going to import their soybeans. And that market took us a long time to get. We were giving them 25% of our production. So that's the real issue here. And now, with the way the world has changed in the last 25 years, there's a lot more production now in South America, and it's given them another option. We'd have a lot more leverage if there weren't such a huge crop and more acres being planted every year in South America. And I think that's the real question, Scott. We saw this back, remember when we had the grain embargo with Jimmy Carter and all that wheat that used to go to Russia? We lost that business. And, the world adjusts. That's my big concern here. I don't want this to go any longer than it has to, because I don't want to lose that business. It's 25% of our business that we need to do with China. Now, the good news is they have 1 billion people. They have 500 million hogs they have to feed. So they need our stuff. I just think that this is taking longer than we thought to work out this trade deal. And it seems like the soybean producers are taking the brunt of the pressure here. So we'll see how it all turns out. But I think, if they cut a deal tomorrow, we'd be right back at it. It's a very, very expensive game of chicken, and it's very, very nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I mean, especially what we saw the Argentinians do.
Yeah.
So, and maybe we're going to pick up some of the slack with other countries around the world, but it's not going to make up for 100% of what China's not buying. So,
correct.
You and I are aligned on that. I don't know what you think, Tony, but I'll throw it back over to you.
Well, I want to throw one more market up here for you, and just a gentle reminder that We like to take it personally here, but when you look at what's happening in the canola market, we're lower across the board. Well, now November and January back up into positive territory. But remember, same thing is happening here to Canada and their canola as is happening to the U.S. and our soybeans. So we might want to take it personal, but remember, it is China. All right, we'll take a quick break. Come back, pick up the conversation on the other side. This is Market Day Report. So we look at markets. We try to report on markets. How about we start with live cattle? And live cattle futures are mostly higher. The 2025 contracts are in the red. The October will expire later this month off 47, and December down 17, but it's really been in higher territory most of the day. Higher for February, April, and June. Let's go over to feeders. Feeders have been higher as well. November at 359.45. That is a dime higher. Now, box beef. Got this from Troy Vetterkind yesterday. Vetterkind Cattle Brokerage, $42 loss in 1 month in choice, talking box, and $37 loss in the select for box beef. Does that work its way into the conversation? Chris Robinson's with Robinson Ag Marketing. Scott Shellady is the cow guy. Scott?
Yeah, I think the economy is slowing down. We're not going to go into a recession. I mean, we've got a great GDP print that we had a week or two ago. Obviously, we're on the cusp of artificial intelligence, but that doesn't mean we can't slow down and we can't see things get softer. We had an ADP report today that showed things are getting softer. And I think that might bleed through a little bit, and you might see some folks push back a little bit from the spend. I don't think it's a massive thing, but at some point in time, the trees don't grow to the sky. We're going to do the story. We're going to talk about this on the Cow Guy Close today. They're even pushing back from the sky high ticket prices to ski in Colorado, in Vail. So there are places that we're starting to see the consumer pull back a little bit. We've seen that with, say, Walmart and their CEO and their CFO, what they report, Darden restaurants as well. The wealthier customers looking for more of a value, they're moving down into those value chain restaurants rather than eat at the really expensive ones. And the people that make less than 50 or 60,000 have just dropped off and they're not going out anymore. So I feel like that's happening. It's not maybe a bellwether moment, but it is. I think the consumer is saying, hey, maybe enough is enough here. I'm not going to call a high to these contracts like cattle, but I can just tell you that it feels like, anecdotally, enough is enough.
Great. Okay, Chris, what thoughts do you have here and the consumer as well?
Well, I mean, yeah, you're starting to see that. And that's kind of a lagging indicator that might come in. If we get 3 or 4 months of that, you may see, that radically changed. At the end of the day, we still don't have enough. The herd's not big enough. It hasn't been big enough since COVID. And the fact that you've got now they aren't going to do anything directly. There had been some talks that maybe they would do something directly. They're not going to do something directly to try and help rebuild the herd. That's probably a good sign. Anytime you have people that don't generally get involved in the business decides, hey, we're going to fix it by giving you money, usually doesn't turn out well. But when it does correct, and it will correct, go back and look at 2014, 2015. Those were the previous record all-time highs. We could correct sharply like that. It's going to be something that nobody sees coming. It happens every time. I've been doing this for 33 years. So I would just say this. Instead of trying to guess the top, we're $50 off the lows. If you go out to the deferred live cattle, look at August batch for next year, they're $50 off where we were this time last year. Guess what? At some point, there's a possibility that we lose 25 of that. And I don't know what's going to cause it, but the best thing you can do is capture that revenue. Stop trying to call a top, because as soon as it does does roll over, that's when it's going to be a very aggressive sell-off. And Scott's right. When the consumer decides they don't want to pay $14 for one steak at the grocery store, that'll be the day it stops.
Chris Robinson, Robinson Ag Marketing. Scott Shellady is the cow guy.